You know, I really, really wanted to like this. In fact, I actually wanted to love it, but I just didn't. Michael is the latest music biopic directed by Anton Fuqua and starring Michael Jackson's nephew Jafar Jackson as the titular Michael. So, bit of lore drop, okay? I am a Michael Jackson fan, but even more so, I'm a music biopic fan. Some of them are some of my favorite movies ever. I love music biopics. I don't know why. I just, every time one comes out, I just get really excited about it. Whether I'm familiar with the musical artist or not, they just tend to be just so compelling, even if they're really formulaic. I don't know, I just got a soft spot for them. So, when hearing that, an actual Michael Jackson biopic was coming out for theaters, because I know that there's been others, I got really excited for this. And I was so interested to see what they would do, how they would tell it, and if it would come out to be worth it with all the reshoots and everything. And it wasn't. So, this movie follows Michael Jackson's life from 1966 at the start of the Jackson 5 to 1988 when he releases the Bad album. It stops right before things get really dark, and I'm going to get into that in a second. But let me start off with the positives, okay? This movie is extremely well made. It looks great. Of course, the music is awesome, and the performances are top notch. They're pitch perfect. Jafar Jackson is scarily accurate to Michael in terms of how he looks, how he sounds, how he moves. It's scarily accurate, but everything else surrounding all these performances is just really glossed over. It's very tame, very sanitized. And when the credits started rolling on this thing, and I saw all the producers are essentially Jacksons, it made sense to me. Now, I liked this movie as it was going along, but I was liking it less and less because it's so frustrating. Look, we all probably are aware of all the controversial stuff that happened with Michael in the 90s leading up to the early 2000s, but there were some dark things in the 80s too, and this movie just kind of glosses over those things. For example, right, yeah, you have the turbulent relationship between Michael and Joe, but what they don't touch on is that Michael was so afraid of Joe, his father, that he would get physically sick. He would vomit just being in his presence. And in the movie, you notice that the kids are calling Joe Joseph and not dad or father. And the movie doesn't really explain why, but it's because Joe Jackson demanded that. He did not let the kids call him dad or father. And that's my biggest problem with this movie. It doesn't dive deep enough into those things. Basically, what this movie actually is, in its barest form, is a Michael Jackson greatest hits highlight reel, but in just a movie instead of a greatest hits album. And Michael Jackson was a very complicated person, and we later found out a very strange person. And that aspect of Michael could have made such an interesting movie. But with the estate having such a hand in the making of this movie, I think that they wanted to just gloss over that. They wanted to ignore it. The darkest they get is a couple of things that we already knew. How Joseph Jackson was abusive to his children, and the thing where Michael's hair was burnt over the Pepsi commercial. It doesn't really tell us anything that we don't already know. Michael was a perfectionist, and almost unhealthily so. It was a toxic trait he got from his upbringing of being made to dance and sing and practice until it was absolutely perfect. And even then, Joseph Jackson was not satisfied. And Michael carried that into his adult life. He would dance until he just physically couldn't anymore. You kind of hear that a little bit when he's doing Motown 25 and he says, "Oh, I needed to be on my toes a bit longer." But They don't really dive into it, and you really could have to just show the complicated person that he was. It would have made such a compelling arc for the movie. But no, they wanted this to be a feel-good movie, which, look, Michael Jackson was a humanitarian, he was a nice guy, but there was more to him than that. He was a person, just like all of us. We're all complicated. We all have negative aspects to ourselves, and so did he. Then you have other parts of him where he felt he needed to be perfect, where he was just getting endless plastic surgery. It could have been a very, very tragic part of him that they could have explored here, but they didn't. And he's just a saccharine nice guy that doesn't raise his voice or anything. He just quietly stands up to Joe Jackson, and then Joe Jackson doesn't really do anything. He just kind of laughs it off or grumbles and says, "Oh, how could you do this to me?" It doesn't really do that. Now, I will say that in the scenes where Michael is going against Joe in terms of his decisions, it does feel tense when they confront each other because the performance is just that strong, but it's very quick. It's like, oh, okay, we're done with that. All right, now, look, Thriller, and we don't get much else. The family, besides Joe and Catherine, are pretty much sidelined too. Nia Long is pretty much just there to, look along sadly as Michael and Joe go at odds with each other, and then at the end, stand up to Joe like, yeah, you can't control him anymore. She doesn't really get much to do, and it was pretty sad because Nia Long has chops. They could have given her a bit more to do, but then you have the brothers, and you have the sisters that are nowhere to be seen. LaToya is here, but Janet and Rebby are not. And I know that there was a thing where apparently Janet Jackson did not want her likeness given to this movie, which actually says more about them making this movie and how she knew what they were doing, more so than they just didn't want to involve her. Because throughout his life, Michael and Janet were very close, and that dynamic is just missing from this movie. Then you have everything where the Jackson boys had so much going on. They had a variety show. They had an animated series. They they were superstars before Michael became the superstar that he became, and all that's just brushed over. It's just brushed over. And I understand that this is Michael. This is the Michael Jackson story, but Michael Jackson's story begins and ends with the Jacksons. They were with him up until he was a teenager. Then he decided to just go out on his own. But the Jacksons were all integral to each other. And that was just another part of this movie that just killed me. That they just, never mind, we're just not going to have any of that. Now, apparently there's talks of a sequel. The movie ends and it says, "His story continues," which I haven't heard anyone mention this, but that's also one of his first albums from the 90s. It's called His Story Continues. So I don't know if that's a reference to that, but it also indicates and implies that there's going to be a second movie. And this movie has done phenomenally well, so they're going to do another one, which that's going to be the second half of his life, I believe. But I'm so worried that they're not going to be honest because, again, the Jacksons have their hands all over this one movie, and they're more than likely going to have their hands all over the other one. So, are we really going to get the honest second half? I don't think so. We didn't get an honest first half. Some things we can expect to see in that sequel. A love story with Lisa Marie Presley. Probably some things involving him getting political. He got very political and angry in the 90s. He always spoke about human rights early on, but it was in the 90s that he really came into his own with that. I don't think they're going to get into any of the allegation stuff. They're just not going to do it. They're not going to tackle it. So, as it exists, is Michael a good movie? Not really, because it's kind of shallow. Is it fun? Sure. And I'll probably watch it again. I mean, it's entertaining. It's definitely entertaining. It's not offensively bad or anything. I understand some people may find it offensive with some of the lies it tells and the fact that, like I mentioned before, it just glosses over some things. But just as it is, sure, it's fine. But is it the definitive Michael Jackson story that we deserve? No. Is it the tribute movie that Michael deserves? No, because even biopics that show a person's worst side, warts and all, even that is a tribute to that person. And the fact that they just glossed over everything in this movie that would have made Michael as a character in this movie compelling and complicated, it just is a disservice. It really is to Michael Jackson's legacy. It's a huge disservice. But that's just my opinion. I'm seeing a lot of positive feedback on this movie, and I mean, I get it. Like I said, as it is, it's a fun watch. I mean, you get to see the behind the scenes of Michael Jackson music videos. You hear the songs. When he's on stage. It's like you're at the concerts. I mean, I get it. I get how someone can be taken by this movie, and I was at first until I just opened my eyes a little bit and realized this movie's kind of trying to tell me I don't need to think that hard. And I think as an audience, we deserve more than that. But love them or hate them, those are my thoughts on Michael. What did you think about it? If you saw it already, are you a fan of these kinds of movies? Are you a Michael Jackson fan? What do you think we can expect from the sequel if it ever comes to fruition? Let me know down in the comments. Let's talk everything movies, music biopics, Michael Jackson down in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.